Story 1. The Screen in the Dark. I don't scare easily. Horror movies make me laugh. Ouija boards are just cardboard. And kids? Kids are creepy by default. That's what I kept telling myself when I agreed to babysit my coworker's son last Friday. She lives in one of those pre-war apartment buildings downtown. Hardwood floors, squeaky doors, old radiator that sounds like it's whispering nonsense at 3 a.m. Quaint, she said. Historical. What she didn't mention is that the living room has this massive flat-screen TV that reflects everything behind you like a mirror. The kid, Milo, is 7. Quiet, pale, the kind who blinks too little and stares too much. I figured he'd just want iPad time and microwave popcorn. But he kept dragging this ratty floor cushion in front of the black TV screen, sitting crisscrossed, like he was in school and whispering into it. No sound, just lips moving. When I asked what he was doing, he looked at me dead serious and said, "She gets sad if I don't talk to her." I laughed. Nervously, yeah, and said something like, "Right, and my toaster talks to me when it's lonely." He didn't laugh. He just turned back around and kept whispering. Around 9 p.m., I put Milo to bed. He didn't argue or beg for stories, just crawled under the blanket and asked if I could turn her volume down. I rolled my eyes and said, "Sure thing, buddy," like any good babysitter pretending not to be weirded out. Then I headed back to the living room to scroll through TikTok and finish the Chinese food his mom left. The room was quiet except for the radiator clicking in the corner and the faint hum of the refrigerator. The TV was off, but its screen still caught the lamp's glow behind me, turning it into a dark, warped mirror. About 15 minutes in, while I was halfway through a video of a dog in sunglasses, I heard something, soft, like a whisper. I paused the video. Nothing. Then it came again. A voice, low and female, repeating something I didn't quite catch. I stood up, heart kicking a little, and looked around. The windows were shut. No one was in the hallway. But when I turned toward the TV screen, I saw something that made my scalp prickle. My reflection was there, but my mouth wasn't moving. The voice was still speaking, and it was saying something I had said earlier that night. I froze. The reflection in the screen was still me. Same clothes, same lighting, but my expression was wrong. Too still, too focused. Like a playback of myself without any awareness behind the eyes. Then I heard it again. "Sure thing, buddy." In my exact voice, but slower, more deliberate. That's what I'd said to Milo, word for word. I stepped closer, staring into the screen. My reflection blinked a beat late. I'm not joking. I blinked, and the reflection followed a split second. Afterward, like it had to process the input first. My chest went tight. Trying to shake it off, I grabbed the remote and turned the TV on, just to break the reflection. Static. No menu, no input prompt, just white noise and those flickering gray lines you only see in old horror films. I clicked the power again. Nothing. The remote didn't respond. I even pressed the button on the TV itself. Same result. But the weirdest part? My reflection didn't vanish when the screen went to static. It was still there, faint, but outlined against the fuzz like a burnt image on a film reel. Only now, it wasn't sitting anymore. It was standing. I backed away. I didn't run. Not yet. Because that's not what rational people do. I told myself it was some kind of screen burn or maybe a prank app his mom had downloaded. I even said out loud, "Okay, weird tech glitch. Cool." But as I moved, the figure in the static didn't mimic me. It stayed in place, arms at its sides, head tilted just slightly as if listening. I circled around the couch, keeping my eyes on it. That's when it raised one hand, slowly, awkwardly, like it had never done it before, and waved at me. But its fingers were wrong. Too long. That was enough. I grabbed my bag and made a beeline for Milo's room, heart pounding now. He was awake, sitting up in bed with the blanket bunched in his lap. "She's mad," he whispered before I could say anything. "You weren't supposed to ignore her." I tried to keep my voice steady, told him everything was fine, that the TV was just being weird. He shook his head. "That's not the TV." I looked over my shoulder. The hallway. Behind me was empty, dark and still. But Milo was staring past me like something was standing right there. I shut his door, locked it, and shoved a chair under the handle. I wasn't playing anymore. I called his mom, straight to voicemail. I texted her, "Call me now. Something's wrong with the TV or the apartment. Not sure which." While I waited, I listened. No footsteps, no whispering. Just the radiators ticking and Milo's quiet breathing. He didn't ask questions. Just curled up like this was routine. I thought about leaving, grabbing him and bolting. But to where? It was past midnight in downtown Chicago, and I didn't even know where she parked her car. After a few minutes, the light in the hallway flickered. Once, twice, then held. I pressed my ear to the door. Nothing. I stepped back, and then I heard it. My voice again, right outside the door, speaking softly. "Sure thing, buddy." Then a pause. A breath. "You weren't supposed to ignore her." Same tone, same rhythm. My voice like someone had recorded it and was playing it back. Milo covered his ears and rocked forward. I couldn't stop staring at the doorknob, waiting to see if it would turn. But it didn't. The knob stayed still. The voice faded. After a long stretch of silence, Milo finally lay back down, like he knew the moment had passed. I sat there, wide-eyed, staring at nothing until the morning light started bleeding through the blinds. Around 6 a.m., his mom texted back, "Sorry. Fell asleep early. Everything okay?" I didn't even answer. When she got home, I handed her the keys, said I wasn't feeling great, and left without looking at the living room. I haven't been back. Won't go back. I thought maybe it was just sleep deprivation or the kid messing with me somehow. But yesterday, while cleaning out my bag, I found my phone and a video I didn't remember recording. It's 3 minutes long, all static. But halfway through, there's a flash of an image. Me, standing in front of the TV, mouth open like I'm speaking. Only I'm wearing different clothes. I haven't shown anyone. I don't know what it means. But I unplug my own TV now before bed, and I cover the screen, just in case it's listening. Story 2. I didn't think twice when I accepted the babysitting gig. The pay was generous, the apartment was sleek and modern, and the parents seemed chill. The kind of wealthy Miami couple who managed their kids the same way they managed their investments, efficiently and at a distance. Their daughter, Ava, was 3. Sweet, shy, barely spoke above a whisper. I was mostly there to keep her company and make sure she fell asleep by 9. They had a camera in her room, the kind that links to your phone so you can monitor things from anywhere. I downloaded the app they told me to use and set it up without thinking much of it. The first night, everything was fine. Ava asked me to leave her door cracked open and keep the hallway light on. Nothing weird about that. She seemed afraid of the dark, or maybe just anxious without her parents around. But on the second night, while scrolling on my phone and checking the baby monitor casually, I noticed something strange. The carousel mobile above her crib was spinning in the video feed. Not fast, not wildly, just turning slowly, steadily. When I walked to her room to check, it wasn't moving at all, completely still. I thought it might be a glitch. I even laughed and took a screenshot just to show her parents. But when I tried to open it again, the video feed had frozen. I figured the app was buggy. It wouldn't be the first time tech acted up in a high-rise like that. But when I reopened the camera, the image refreshed, and Ava was sitting upright in her bed, staring straight at the camera. Not crying, not calling for me, just watching. I went back to her room, thinking maybe she had a nightmare. But when I opened the door, she was asleep, curled up on her side, facing the wall, breathing slow and even. I stood there longer than I should have, trying to make sense of what I saw. Had I imagined her awake on the screen? The next morning, Ava barely spoke. During breakfast, she asked me, very quietly, "Is she still in the phone?" I asked who she meant, but she wouldn't look at me. Just kept stirring her cereal without eating it. I thought maybe she'd been watching videos she wasn't supposed to, or heard something on TV. Still, her words clung to me all day. That night, when I tucked her in, she grabbed my wrist and said, "She says you're not me, but you have my name." That stopped me cold. I don't even know how she knew my full name. I was just Miss Katie to her. After I got her to sleep, I sat on the couch and opened the baby monitor app again. The live feed came up like normal, just Ava under her blankets, the mobile still. But then a text notification popped up inside the app. Not from outside, like a regular message, but inside the interface. It looked like part of the camera log, except it wasn't. It read, "Stop watching." Just that, no timestamp, no sender. I tried to refresh the screen, but the message disappeared, and the app crashed entirely. I deleted and re-downloaded it, thinking maybe it had been hacked or corrupted. When I logged back in, the camera history was gone. The whole archive had been wiped clean. The only footage available was from that very moment, a live feed showing Ava fast asleep. I watched it for a long time just to be sure. At some point she rolled onto her back. The mobile above her crib started spinning again. Slowly, deliberately. But this time, I could hear it. The soft, tinny melody started playing through my phone's speaker. But in the room, it was dead silent. I went into Ava's room, holding my phone out in front of me. The mobile wasn't moving. The melody stopped the moment I crossed the threshold. She was still asleep. Everything looked normal, except when I glanced back at my phone. The camera feed now showed me standing over an empty crib. My stomach dropped. I waved my hand in front of the lens, turned in circles, even checked under the crib like an idiot. She was right there in front of me, breathing softly. But in the app, the room was empty. Just the crib, the nightlight, and a faint shadow in the corner. One that didn't match anything in the real room. I backed out and turned the light on. Ava stirred a little but didn't wake. I sat on the floor for the next hour, staring at both her and the screen. They didn't match. At some point, the screen showed her sitting upright again, even though I could see her sleeping soundly. She turned toward the camera in the app and smiled. It wasn't a kid's smile. It was too knowing, too still. Then the feed blinked, and the message came back, "This is not your place." I closed the app and didn't open it again that night. I didn't sleep either. I sat outside her door, scrolling through my phone, looking for anything online. App glitches, ghost stories, child psychology forums. Everything felt useless. Around 4 a.m., I checked my texts out of habit, and there it was. A message from an unknown number, no profile picture, no name. It just said, "You're doing a good job, Katie. She's almost ready." My chest locked up. The weirdest part, it appeared in the same thread as Ava's parents, like it had been grafted into our conversation history. The next morning, I confronted the parents casually. I asked if they ever noticed anything strange with the camera app. They just laughed and said they never checked it. That's what I was for. I asked if Ava had any imaginary friends or strange habits, and the mom gave me a weird look. "She's quiet, sure, but she's never mentioned anything like that," she said. "Unless you count that phase where she insisted we weren't her real parents. Said the other ones live in the phone." She laughed like it was cute. I didn't. That was my last night working there. I didn't say goodbye to Ava. I couldn't. I left the building with a pit in my stomach and deleted the app as soon as I hit the street. But 2 days later, while going through my phone gallery, I noticed a screen recording, one I didn't remember taking. It was a recording of the baby monitor feed. In it, Ava is awake, sitting in her crib. She turns to the camera, raises one hand and says, "She's gone now, but you're still here." Then she lays back down. I've changed my number since then. Got a new phone. I haven't taken another babysitting job. But sometimes, late at night, I still get notifications. Not texts, screen recordings. Always of dark rooms I don't recognize. And in every one of them, something is moving just out of frame. I don't open them anymore. But I can't delete them either, because one of them, the first one I ever got, ends with a voice that sounds exactly like mine, whispering, "She's not done with you yet." Story 3. I should have known something was off the first time I went down into that basement. The air felt different there, colder, thicker, even in the middle of June. But I didn't think much of it at the time. I was just a broke college student trying to save up for next semester's books, and babysitting 3 evenings a week in a nice suburb seemed like the easiest way to do it. The Marshalls were friendly, their house was spotless, and their 6-year-old son Evan was quiet and well-behaved. Too quiet, maybe. The only rule they gave me was oddly specific. "Please don't move the mirror in the playroom," Mrs. Marshall said the first day as we toured the house. "It's old and sentimental." She smiled a little too tightly. The mirror in question stood alone in the far corner of the basement. A tall antique piece with a thick black wooden frame and a cracked corner near the bottom. Evan never played near it, but he always glanced at it as we passed, sometimes giving a small wave and whispering something under his breath. I asked him once what he was saying. "He gets lonely when I ignore him," he answered, then skipped off like it was the most normal thing in the world. At first, I chalked it up to imagination. Kids say weird things all the time. But Evan didn't seem the type. He was unusually quiet, always watching, always listening. He never threw tantrums or demanded cartoons like other kids I'd babysat. And he never laughed, not until that night. About 2 weeks into the job, I heard a high-pitched giggle coming from the basement. It was around 9 p.m., long after Evan's usual bedtime. When I crept down the stairs, I saw him standing in front of the mirror, his little hands clasped behind his back, his body rocking gently side to side. I called his name. He didn't respond. I moved closer. The moment I touched his shoulder, he snapped around with a grin so wide it startled me. But it wasn't the smile that got me. It was the reflection. In the mirror, Evan was facing forward, unmoving, and his face wasn't smiling. His eyes were red and glossy, lips trembling like he was about to cry. I blinked hard. When I looked again, everything matched. Evan frowned and rubbed his eyes like he'd just woken up. "Don't do that," he mumbled. "You made him scared." I didn't know what to say. I walked him back upstairs without pressing further, but the image of that mismatched reflection burned in my mind. The next morning, I casually asked Mrs. Marshall if Evan had ever talked about imaginary friends. She hesitated, then said, "He used to talk to himself a lot. Less now. Why do you ask?" I made up something vague about childhood development and let it go. But from then on, I started noticing more. Little things I'd missed before. Toys that were facing the mirror even when Evan hadn't played with them. Fingerprints on the glass much higher than he could reach. One night, while Evan napped on the couch, I went down to the basement alone. I stood in front of the mirror and studied my reflection, trying to see what was so special about it. Nothing. Just me, a little paler under the yellowed light. But as I turned to leave, I felt a tug, not on my arm or my shirt, but somewhere deeper. Like something in that glass wanted me to stay. I spun back around, heart thudding. The mirror was just there, still and silent. But for a split second, I thought I saw a shadow duck behind my reflection. It moved the wrong way, to the left when I turned right. That was the first night I had trouble sleeping after my shift. I kept replaying that moment in my head. The flicker behind the glass, the delayed movement, the feeling that something had looked back at me. The next time I babysat, I avoided the basement altogether. We stayed upstairs, watched a movie, had snacks. But as I tucked Evan in, he looked up at me and whispered, "He's mad at you." I asked who he meant, already knowing the answer. "You ignored him," he said, curling under the covers. "He doesn't like that. He thinks you're pretending he's not real." That night, around 3 a.m., I got a call from Mrs. Marshall. "Did you leave the basement light on?" she asked. I hadn't. She said they found Evan down there, barefoot and shivering in front of the mirror. He was talking to it. Not to his reflection, to it. Mr. Marshall had carried him back upstairs, and Evan screamed until they let him fall asleep in their bed. After that, they installed a lock on the basement door. I figured maybe that would be the end of it, but it wasn't. A few days later, Mrs. Marshall texted to cancel our next session. "We're taking a short trip, just a few days. Evan needs a change of scenery." I didn't hear from them for nearly a week. Then one evening, I got a message from an unknown number. No words, just a photo. It was blurry and dim, but I recognized the basement and the mirror. In the reflection stood Evan, except it wasn't quite him. His features were off. Too long, too thin, like someone had drawn him from memory and gotten the proportions wrong. His mouth was open, as if he were screaming, but there was no sound. I didn't reply. I didn't sleep either. The next morning, I drove to the marshal's house, but no one answered. The curtains were drawn, the mailbox overflowing. I stood at the front door for a long time, hand hovering over the handle before I turned and left. That night I dreamed of the mirror. I was standing in front of it, just like before, but this time my reflection smiled. I didn't. It lifted a hand and pressed its palm to the glass. I felt it, cold and real. I haven't babysat since. I told myself I'd forget about it, that maybe stress and sleeplessness were playing tricks on me. But sometimes at night, I catch myself glancing at mirrors without meaning to, checking to see if my reflection moves when I don't. A few days ago, I walked past the mirror in my apartment hallway and saw a smudge on the glass. When I wiped it away, I realized it was a small handprint, too small to be mine. I live alone. I don't know what Evan saw in that basement or what followed him out of it. I don't even know if the marshals are still in that house. But sometimes I still get messages from that same unknown number. No text, just photos of mirrors, different ones now, in hotel rooms, store windows, my rearview mirror, and in every one of them, I'm there, only it's never quite me. Story 4. I don't scare easily. I've lived in crappy apartments with moldy ceilings and roommates who forgot to lock the door at night. So when a friend of my professor offered me a well-paid house-sitting gig in Savannah, I didn't hesitate. The house was massive, all creaky hardwood floors and over-decorated hallways, the kind of place with framed oil paintings and way too many empty rooms. They were vacationing in Europe for 3 weeks, and all I had to do was feed the cat, water a few plants, and keep an eye on the security system. Easy money. The first few days were uneventful, unless you count the cat barfing on a Persian rug. The house had a security panel connected to 6 internal cameras, 1 for each hallway and common area. I liked checking them at night before bed, mostly to reassure myself that no one had broken in. But by the 5th night, I noticed something off. The hallway camera outside the study showed an old grandfather clock. I thought maybe I hadn't noticed it before until I walked by and saw nothing there. Just a bare patch of wall. I figured it was a glitch or maybe an old recording got stuck. At least that's what I told myself. I told myself I must have imagined the table decor. Maybe it was a lagging frame from some older footage, but the next night, it happened again. This time, I saw something even stranger. The wallpaper was different. Not the soft cream and blue floral I'd passed every day, but a darker patterned design with heavy gold trim. It flashed for barely a second before switching back to normal. I stared at the screen, heart suddenly racing. I even walked into the hallway to double check, but everything was exactly as it should be. Cream wallpaper, empty table, same old antique mirror across from the front door. It was the mirror that started to bother me after that. Something about the way it caught the light from the camera feed felt off. One night, as I passed through the hallway to use the downstairs bathroom, I noticed the reflection looked deeper. I don't know how else to explain it. The mirror was supposed to reflect what was behind me, the front door, the stairwell. But instead, I saw a glimpse of a chair. Not the entryway bench, but a tufted green armchair I'd never seen in the house. When I turned around, the space behind me was empty. I stood in front of the mirror for a solid minute, waving my hand, stepping side to side, like some idiot trying to outsmart a carnival illusion. The reflection stayed normal now. Just me, the staircase, and the dull gleam of the hallway lamp. I told myself maybe I'd confused the green of the ficus plant for a chair in the low light. I was starting to sound like my mother, who always had a story ready about the spirits back home in Puerto Rico. I rolled my eyes at myself and went back to bed. But then the feed changed again, and this time I didn't just see furniture. I saw me. On the monitor, in the living room camera, I was lying on the couch in sweatpants and a hoodie, curled up like I was asleep. Which would have been totally fine if I wasn't standing right there in the kitchen, staring at the live feed in real time. I even walked into the living room to prove it wasn't some old recording. The couch was empty. But the monitor still showed me there, dead asleep, barely breathing. I shut off the monitor. Not like that fixed anything. My heart was pounding and my hands were ice cold. I checked the rest of the cameras. Nothing. Just the usual grainy night vision of unused hallways and motionless furniture. I tried to laugh it off, muttering something about too much caffeine, but I couldn't shake the image. I even took a selfie in the living room and compared it to the feed I'd recorded on my phone. In the shot from the monitor, my hair was down, but I had it tied up that night. That's when I stopped laughing. The next day I unplugged the camera system. I told myself I didn't need it. No one was breaking in, and clearly the tech was just buggy. Problem solved. Except my phone started going off around 3:14 a.m. Motion detection alerts, sent from the app that was supposed to be inactive. First one, then another, then 10, all from the living room. I didn't even want to check, but my curiosity got the better of me. The video showed the couch again, and someone was still lying on it, still wearing my clothes, still breathing slow and deep like they were asleep. I marched into the living room with every light on and a kitchen knife in my hand. Like that. Would do anything against whatever this was. The couch was empty, of course. No imprint on the cushions, no strange smells, no signs of forced entry. Just the quiet hum of the air conditioner and the cat flicking her tail like nothing was wrong. But when I went back to the video on my phone, the figure was still there. Only now it had turned its head, slightly, like it was listening for something. The face was blurry, blurred in a way the rest of the image wasn't. I couldn't sleep that night. I laid on the floor with my back against the wall and every light on in the house. The next morning, I emailed the homeowners, saying the system was malfunctioning and needed a reset. They were polite, said the cameras were new and had never done that before. I didn't mention the duplicate me. I barely believed it myself, but I didn't plug the system back in. I didn't want to give that version of me any more opportunities to show up. I just wanted to get through the next 10 days and collect my paycheck. I made it almost a week without another incident. Then, on the second to last night, I was brushing my teeth upstairs when I heard the faint buzz of a notification from my phone. I hadn't reinstalled the camera app. At least I thought I hadn't. But there it was, open on my screen, like it had never been deleted. A single clip was waiting to play. I don't know why I pressed it. Curiosity, maybe. Habit. The footage showed the living room, lit dimly by the porch light outside. On the couch, me again. But this time, the figure was awake. It was sitting upright, head tilted, staring directly into the camera. There was no blur anymore. It was my face, same hoodie, same tired eyes. But the mouth, it was smiling. Just a little. Like it had been waiting. I slammed the phone face down on the counter and left the house within 10 minutes. Slept in my car in a Kroger parking lot, lights on, doors locked. The next morning, I left the keys and a note in the mailbox. I don't care about the paycheck anymore. But if you've got cameras in your house, watch them closely. Just make sure it's really you on the other end. Story 5. I never really liked mirrors. I always felt like they showed too much, like they weren't just reflecting, but studying you back. That might sound dramatic, but I've always been a bit too sensitive for my own good. Sounds, smells, even tiny shifts in someone's facial expression, I notice them, I absorb them. That's probably why what happened in that apartment felt like it slowly poisoned me from the inside. It didn't start with screams or crashes. It started with silence. I was babysitting a girl named Ellie in Milwaukee's Lower East Side, in one of those old brick buildings with crooked floors and radiators that knock like something's trapped inside. Her parents were a little odd, very polite, very cold. The kind that post Montessori quotes on Instagram but don't say goodbye to their kid when they leave. Ellie was 5, quiet, serious. She barely spoke to me. But on the third night, I watched her. I heard her whispering softly in the guest room, the one with the big antique mirror leaned up against the far wall. The lights were out. The power had gone down an hour earlier in a thunderstorm. And in that thick electric silence, she was talking to the mirror like it could hear her. I didn't interrupt her right away. I just stood in the hallway, barely breathing, trying to make out what she was saying. It wasn't baby talk or pretend. Her tone was hushed, serious, like she was being given instructions. "Okay, I won't." "Tell her," she said at one point, followed by a long pause, and then a quiet, "I promise." I stepped into the room and flicked on the flashlight on my phone. She flinched when the light hit her, turned quickly, and gave me a look I hadn't seen on her face before. Guilt, like I'd caught her doing something shameful. I asked her who she was talking to. She said, "Nobody. It's just the mirror game." I asked her what the rules of the game were. She shrugged and said, "You have to be quiet for it to work." That was all. No giggles, no further explanation. She climbed into bed and turned away from me. I sat in the living room for a while, unsettled, the air still dead from the outage. I was too old to be creeped out by children's games, but something about how serious she was, how completely she believed she wasn't supposed to tell me, stuck with me. When the lights flickered back on around midnight, I made a point to avoid looking directly into any of the mirrors as I walked around locking up. It made no sense, but it felt like staring into one too long might show me something I wasn't ready to see. The next time I babysat, Ellie had drawn something and left it on the coffee table. It was crayon on printer paper, a rectangle with a little girl on one side and what looked like a gray, distorted face on the other. The eyes were huge and flat. The girl had her hand on the mirror. I asked if she made it at daycare. She said, "No, that's me and my friend. She's behind the glass." I asked what her friend's name was, and Ellie frowned like I'd insulted her. "She doesn't like names," she said quietly. She said names make things stay. I didn't know what the hell that meant, but it gave me a chill I couldn't shake. That night I found a kitchen knife under Ellie's pillow when I was tucking her in. Not hidden well, just slid between the pillow and the mattress. I froze. When I asked her why it was there, she wouldn't look at me. She just mumbled, "Sometimes she tells me to keep it close." I told her that wasn't safe and removed it. She didn't protest, didn't cry, just watched me with this unreadable look like she was waiting to see what would happen next. I messaged her parents. No response. I put the knife on top of the fridge and sat in the living room again, heart racing, wondering if I was supposed to call someone. But who do you even call about something like that? I started keeping my eye on that mirror. It was tall, framed in dark wood, and leaned just slightly forward like it was peering into the room instead of simply standing there. During the day, it looked normal, dusty, a bit warped from age, but at night, in low light or in complete silence, it seemed to deepen somehow, like there was more space behind the glass than the wall allowed. Once, when Ellie was napping, I sat across from it on the bed and stared at it. Nothing moved. But there was a weird pressure in the air like being underwater. My ears popped slightly, and for a second I thought I saw something in the very back of the reflection. A flicker, like someone walking past in the distance. But when I turned around, there was nothing, just the dresser and a pile of toys. A few nights later, I dozed off on the couch while Ellie slept. I woke up around 2 a.m. to the faintest sound, like soft, dragging fingernails against glass. I wasn't even fully conscious when I stood up and walked toward the hallway. The apartment was dim, lit only by the light from the street lamp bleeding through the blinds. I turned the corner into the guest room, and my whole body froze. Ellie was sitting on the floor in front of the mirror, not touching it, just staring. And the reflection? It wasn't right. The angle of her head was off by just a few degrees. Her reflection blinked before she did. I whispered her name and she turned slowly, like coming out of a trance. The reflection didn't move at all. It just kept staring forward. I rushed in and pulled her away, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my neck. When I looked back at the mirror, everything was normal again. My reflection moved with me, blinked with me. I told myself it was a trick of the light, that I was half asleep, that mirrors sometimes distort things. But that didn't explain what she said to me when I got her back into bed. She doesn't like you watching. She said you need to stop. The last time I went to that apartment, it was just for a few hours while the parents ran some errands. Ellie was quiet again, even more withdrawn. She didn't look at me once. I went into the guest room to grab her sweater before we went for a walk. I avoided the mirror on purpose, kept my head down. But when I stood up, I saw movement. Just a flicker out of the corner of my eye. I looked up, and for a split second, my reflection didn't follow me. It was standing completely still, staring directly at me. Then it blinked and everything snapped back into place. But I knew. It wasn't a trick. It wasn't my mind. Something else was looking out from behind that glass, and it knew I'd seen it. I quit that job the next day, sent a long, polite message about needing to focus on school. They didn't even ask why. I blocked the number and deleted Ellie's drawings from my phone. But I still think about that mirror. Not because I want to, but because I dream about it. In the dreams, I'm standing in front of it again, only I'm not moving. I can see myself inside it, tapping gently on the other side of the glass, mouthing something I can't hear. Sometimes I wake up with my hands pressed flat against my bedroom wall, like I'm still reaching for the surface. I don't know what Ellie saw. I don't know what it wanted from her, or from me. All I know is I've started catching small delays in mirrors again, even in my own apartment. Just a blink, a breath behind, like my reflection is lagging, waiting for me to notice. I've covered every mirror in my place now, but I can still feel it when I pass by one. That thing, it doesn't need to stay in that apartment. I think once it knows your face, it remembers. And if it ever starts whispering to me the way it did to Ellie, I'm afraid I might just listen.